This is the Harmonic Motion Podcast, a place where you, dear listener, can join with automotive aftermarket professionals as they delve into and discuss the matters which matter.
On today's session, I've got Jennifer from HR Vitals joining me to discuss things about businesses and teams and your core team in your business. So welcome to the Harmonic Motion Podcast, Jen.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, very excited to talk to you today about this particular aspect of business. There's a lot of questions in people's mind. There's a big element to running a successful business because I think there's an adage where there isn't a business without the people, and the people in the business are the business. I know that's a well-known and versed view generally in industry, but I'm not sure how much that's accepted by people in garages and running garages. And I think hopefully today we can talk about this in a bit more detail. And before we do, I wondered if you might be able to share your background in this line of work with our listener to give them an idea of the sort of thing that you've been up to.
So my background, to be as brief with it as possible, I always wanted to have a job where it was about making sure people were happy at work. It sounds a bit cliche, it sounds a bit cheesy, but we all have to go to work. It doesn't mean that it has to be stressful. It doesn't have to be miserable. We can arrange jobs around people, work environments so that everybody enjoys going to work. That is definitely doable. So that was always my goal. That's always my main interest. So years ago, I spent 4 years studying psychology, focusing on understanding people in groups, what creates a positive change, what do we go through as teams, dynamics, how to get the best outcomes. I then graduated with all this information and not a great deal of work experience. So went and did a variety of different jobs, from zookeeper to making ice cream, working in rehab, finance, HR, all sorts of different jobs, picking up different experience, seeing how different companies work, big and small, how do they motivate different teams. It's kind of hands-on work experience, but always people watching, seeing what makes good teams and how do bosses get the most out of their staff, and all of these really exciting things that make a difference, from staff being really happy to be at work and pulling together as a team to going to work because they've got bills to pay and that's what you do. So really big difference. So always been people watching, love talking to people about people. And about 6 years ago, met Mark, has his own garage in the automotive industry and interested in talking about people and work. And he would be telling me about life in the garage, experiences, differences between front of house, workshop, day-to-day challenges. And after a couple of years, there was another garage owner who needed a bit of help with HR. I was qualified. I thought, just a bit of work on the side, and I absolutely loved it. The garage owner seemed to really appreciate it as well. Then recommended me to other garage owners. That then snowballed to a point where my HR Vitals work was more of a demand than my full-time job. So I left my full-time job and focused solely on working in the automotive industry, sharing what I had learned from previous years, and again, seeing good results, good outcomes again and again, so that, disciplinaries are extremely rare, and we're talking about really nice things of how to get the most out of your team and what do I say in a one-to-one, and I'm thinking about giving this pay rise. How do I have that conversation? And yeah, really, really nice things. So it really quickly moves away from, I've got this disciplinary, I've got this issue. Do I give a warning? This mistake's happened. Once you've addressed that once, you can then move forward into, okay, how do you want your garage to look? What do you want it to feel like? The technicians, what cars are you trying to attract? What's it looking like for you? And what is the difference between what life is like now and where you want it to be? So we talk through that. And then my job is to assist in the people side of it. And then the advantages being HR qualified, I can make sure that it's legal. And all the paperwork that needs to go through to support that, I've got all of that covered. So it's really cool being able to have that conversation about how do we want things to be. We talk through the solution, and then I can do all the admin steps. So we're not going down this path of thinking, oh, this is a brilliant way of addressing the problem, and then finding out we've actually done an absolute clanger and done a huge mistake. So yeah, it's really cool to have every angle covered. And then obviously, I'm sure as many of the listeners know, you talk to your partners and your family about garage life. So Mark and I are still talking about the automotive industry when we're in the car, having tea, doing the shop all the time. So yeah, it's a way of life for me now to be talking about the aftermarket independent garages, what's going on. It's been huge the past 4 years, everything that's happened. So it's been really cool. And I'm seeing really awesome changes happening. Love it.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. So, in terms of your engaging with a garage owner or a business owner, then Jen, do you sort of sit alongside them as a consultant per se? So they're running the business, and you're their go-to for all elements regarding human resource management, if that's a word, or in a team building. So you're working with them in that. Am I correct in understanding that?
Yes. Yeah, and some industries, they call it a people partner, not a partner in the business sense, but just someone that you can go to, explain your situation, your dilemma, your goals. I'm there to provide advice, but it's always done with the idea that the garage owner is the owner. They are the one delivering the information, managing the situation. I'm a sounding board. I'm separate for them to speak to. But it is them, I don't turn up at meetings as HR. It is them that are running it. We don't add another person into the mix. I am there as and when is necessary. Because, people, employers of this size, they don't need a full-time HR either. So, but it's really handy to know that if you need me, I'm there. And if you don't need me, I'm off speaking to other technicians, front of house, garage owners. So I'm always staying up to date anyway. So then when you need me again, I may have had that conversation with 3 people this month. So I'm there already with the information that person needs. Or I can say, this garage did this. That might not work for you. Why don't we try such and such instead?
Yeah, it's ideal. Fantastic. No, it sounds really interesting. Yeah, and a much needed service because, of course, as you alluded to in your introduction, more so than just the management element of getting it right from an operational perspective. So what you and the garage owner have decided to do, which looks like it might work, make the improvement or facilitate the change. With the human resources element, there's the legislative aspect there, which also has to be compliant, meet the obligations and legislation. And with that changing, best practice has to be met by meeting those terms. So I can see that your expertise in that aspect really gives that security to the garage owner that what they're doing is compliant as well as working. It's compliant.
Yeah, and there's absolutely no judgment. I'd much rather someone said to me, "Can I say this?" or "Is this okay?" or "This is what I'm really thinking," because the more honest we can be in that conversation, then we know what we're actually working with and then can advise. Whereas if I don't have all the information, I can't be as useful as I would like to be.
No, I can see that. In my own personal experience of life to date, there are elements where, you have, as a business owner, maybe, or as an operator, you have some challenges where you don't know the answer, but you know the questions. And I can see that being a vital element to coming up with a solution that works and having that open and frank and honest conversation about the way you feel things are going, and then coming together to come up with a plan or get some guidance, especially from an expert that says, says, well, although that you might be thinking that's not possible to say that, and you have to think about maybe going back down, if that's your emotion, what's the root cause of that, and thinking bigger picture, because sometimes when you're a business owner, you are distinctly emotionally attached to your baby, which is your business, and when you see a problem, it's often challenging to step outside the box. They say about pickled onions, don't know they're pickled onions because they can't see the label on the outside of the jar. And I think as a business owner, often we're caught in that situation where we can't step outside. So I can really see the benefit in having an expert like you on hand to give that advice and guidance.
And if you think about a technician, at most, if they worked at 6 different garages, that might be classed as a lot. So that's 6 different environments that they've picked information up and learned from other people. Whereas if they speak to somebody that's a consultant, they could be speaking to 150 different garages and getting that level of information straight to your specific question is so useful. It saves so much time, but it's just not. I think about this quite a lot. The automotive industry and the aftermarket is so rare in the sense of technicians spend so much time obviously mastering their trade, but their trade means that they need to be fixed to one location. If you think about other trades, other industries, they're mixing with other people so often. Tips and knowledge and different little bits that help get passed around really quickly. And even if you think about a hairdresser, that's a trade where somebody stays in the same spot generally, but they've got all these different customers that they're speaking to, learning all these different things. And the garage owners that I usually speak to are people that have either inherited the business and they're evolving it into a new way of operating, that garage is what they've mostly always known, or they are technicians that have gone through the trade and have decided that they now want to be starting their own business. But you don't really come across an accountant, a technician that used to be an accountant and they've seen how the corporate world works, or, there's different environments. So they've mastered their trade, but all of these, HR and different aspects of running the business and people management, they're like a sponge when they start taking in all that information, but generally day to day, they're missing it. So the people that I'm working with, once we start going through, if somebody is really interested in processes, that usually means that they're the type of person that enjoys being a technician because they're following a process, but they are also not going to appreciate if you randomly change their diary in the afternoon. They've got a different job and they just find out 5 minutes later because they are somebody that naturally likes process and a plan. And you say that and they go, oh yeah, that's obvious. Yeah, we get that quite a lot with so-and-so. But when you explain it like that, it makes sense. And they go, right, okay, so I've got an employee that they're only getting frustrated because they like a process. Now I know that, I will approach things with more process. And it's just that really gentle, simple adaptation, or it might be that they're the person that likes the process. And so if an employee randomly comes to them and just suddenly wants to have a conversation about something, they find that infuriating because, can that employee not see I'm doing something? I'm in the middle of something, or we will chat Friday morning. They've got a process. But by them being able to almost label that, then they go, right, okay, it's not that person's being a bad employee or anything like that. It's just that I like the process. And so having those conversations, then things just fall into place because then they've got that extra bit of knowledge moving forward. That's how I like to work. That's how they like to work. Soothes a lot of situations.
Yeah, so it's that sort of, if you go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and thinking about, also very interesting, then you talked, about their relationships with your coworker and or employer, because very often we think about jobs and functional roles, and Fred does X and I do Y, and you're almost in a silo where actually the highly performing teams function as a team where there's a synergy that means that Fred and Joe and Ned are actually equal to more than just three people, because of the benefit in teamwork where they work well gives the advantage. And you're right that there is potentially that's sometimes lost into relationships at work, that you don't realize maybe each other's preference for communication, for instance, or the way that person's mind works. Is there something a garage owner or a business owner can do, Jen, to sort of do an audit maybe, or can they work out and analyze the team in some aspects? And analyze is probably too strong a word, but maybe evaluate or try and establish what mix of people in whichever characteristics you're looking at, that they could work that out? Is there something that exists?
I'm always talking about colour profiling. I'm a huge fan of it because it introduces a language where we are actually talking about so many psychology theories, but in such an everyday user-friendly language that everyone picks it up really quickly. So colour profiling isn't actually a theory in itself. It's just a way of saying if somebody has got a lot of yellow. So people answer this questionnaire, and then it gives us a grading. And if someone scores quite highly in yellow, then we know that they like new things. They like learning. They like creative. They like listening to problems and problem solving. So we know that type of person isn't naturally going to enjoy being an MOT tester all day long. But if you say to them, do you want to go on this new EV training? They're going to bite your hand off. So it gives us this tool to just understand. And I do want to know, personality assessments, behaviour tests, all of these things. I am with probably the majority of people listening, and I can't stand them. I've spent years studying psychology, and I can't stand that you answer a few questions and then it tells you if you're ECTU or you're, and it irritates me because I think it doesn't give enough credit to how different we are. But what we get with colour profiling is a real diverse mix of being able to understand how we just naturally have preferences. That's all colour profiling is doing. It's looking at what we naturally prefer. And I'm always trying to promote that we go after who we naturally are as managers and employees, colleagues, because that's what we can sustain very easily and it's not stressful. So colour profiling is fantastic for just a very easy way of understanding teams, and it gives the team a language as well for being able to say something to someone, give them feedback, and nobody takes offence to it, because if you're lower in one thing, it just means you're better, you're higher in something else, and we need a mix in a team. So it's really cool for that. I've been doing it for years, and everyone gets their colour profile and they go, oh yeah, that is me. And, they like that feedback. It's really useful. If that's too much for somebody, or they don't want to be entering into that, they can actually pay attention to someone's learning preferences. There's so much that we can take from that, which is extremely valuable. So we've got, and I am actually a tiny bit rusty on this because I've been doing colour profiling for so long, but you've got your visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and what's the other one?
I think there's one. The R. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's the audio, reading. Yeah. Visual and kinesthetic, which is the doing.
That's it. Yeah. So everybody's got their natural preference for how they like to learn. And there's so many cool things that we can learn from this. So if anybody's interested in doing further research, this is what we were taught when we did neuro-linguistic programming, so NLP, which is the science behind how our brain reacts differently to language. And what NLP teaches us is, depending on we can tell what someone's learning style is by watching how they communicate. So if someone is a visual learner, they have their hands up here a lot because that's where their brain taps in. So if you're talking to someone and they're gesturing and their hands are up here, they're telling us they're a visual learner. If someone's auditory, and it goes in order by coincidence, I think, if they learn by listening, so those are the people that when you go on a training course and the instructor says, you do A, B, and C, and then someone puts their hand up and goes, right, so we do A, B, and C. And those people are thinking, he literally just said that, but that's because that person's an auditory learner. They listen, they learn by listening and sound. So they are just saying it to be reinforcing that learn. And so their hands are usually about here when they're talking. Then kinesthetic learners, which the industry, you'll probably have more information on this, more data than I do, but the industry is dominated with kinesthetic learners, doing learners, because you learn by doing. So their hands are, well, you can't even see because I'm a kinesthetic learner and my hands are usually, low gestured, or people aren't even using their hands at all. And so we can tap into how somebody learns to adapt how we communicate with them. And if we've got an instruction to give to a technician, and most people just tell their staff what they want, but if they're not an auditory learner, you're really not helping either party. So you need to be, and even if they are an auditory learner, what you need is for them to repeat back to you what you want. And so there's just with that really helpful way of thinking about how is that person taking in that information, we can delete those 7 attempts of giving that instruction and they just can't get it right and they keep coming back to me. And I say to them, well, what would you do in that situation? And, but if you tap into the learning style of that person, then you are helping yourself and them pick up that information quicker.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's something that, being in the training business, that we focus on massively in terms of transfer of knowledge and also, introducing new skills. We do take that quite seriously, and you're absolutely right. Sometimes assessing the outcomes is matching the delivery of the information to the reception style of the recipient. It's got nothing to do with your message. It's the delivery mechanism, and that's such a really powerful message there, Jen. That if you're not getting through, it's not you and it's not them. It's probably a combination of you and them, just finding that natural style. And like you say, confirmation. And we sort of move into then a little bit more about how comfortable people are in the relationship. In a way, if it's a new relationship, they might be less comfortable asking for that reassurance. But it's really good, I think, knowing in my previous life in corporations, some of the recruitment processes involved quite detailed analysis of personal profiles and team roles and those type of things, where they put a big emphasis on the high performing team being not matching even, but recognizing the elements of the team. And then the coordinator or the manager can maybe partner up, buddy up, and the instruction formats and the work requests and requirements, and even down to deliverables, that the output they're expecting from you will be in this style because that's your preferred learning style and the way that you operate. And I think it's really valid. Jen, if we did a straw poll, no names, no pack drills, what would you say would be the awareness levels generally in garages that are either in existence or maybe looking to build the teams that have that knowledge that that's actually quite a fundamental part of building a high performing team? Is it well known, or is it often surprised? People are surprised by that's one of the approaches in terms of sussing out how to construct or how to manage or how to get the best from.
I think most people are entertaining the idea at first, but mainly out of maybe curiosity or because they naturally like to learn. I think this industry is a huge percentage of people like learning. And so more information, they're like, yeah, more, I'll take that. But I think to answer your question, people that percentage of people that believe understanding the person is a huge factor to business success is low, really low. It's difficult because I only speak to my clients. I can't say how all the garage owners are that I haven't had a chance to speak to yet. But I'm guessing because we haven't spoken yet, they haven't got that drive, that interest to learn about all the benefits, understand people. Yeah, so I'd probably say 10%, really, really, really low.
Yeah, it's not high on the list. So an opportunity then, one of the, if you could say, an easy win for garages that were maybe looking at, having an open mind in terms of building a high performing team. One of the things to do is to do the analysis on the structure of your existing team, would pay dividends.
Yeah, I think people shouldn't underestimate how much value comes from personal development, professional development, being self-aware, and doing your own colour profiling. There'll be plenty of people that aren't aware of their own learning styles and working styles, and what type of manager am I? What do I prefer? How, am I someone that's really comfortable with saying to my staff if they've made a mistake, or do I prefer to bite my tongue? Loads of garage owners are trying to run on a more friendly culture, work environment, but actually people go to work to be in a business that's strong and sturdy, and everybody understands that takes a boss to run that, and places that have structure and are prepared and organised, and a clear identity as well. You don't lose your identity by doing that. The businesses that do that have shaved months off their recruitment process. They have a far better retention rate. They understand their staff, their culture, where the business is going. Things generally flow easier because they're not having so many problems to deal with.
Yeah, and it strikes me when you went through those, that's for me. If I was to visualize a professional versus an, and I'm not going to say unprofessional, but the more professional element of a business, it takes that into account, and that's one of the things where you've had, and you mentioned earlier on, maybe where there's an organic. There are three routes out of garages really: that you sell them, you close them, or you pass them on to someone. So if we look at the other angle of that, how you get into garages are you buy one, you're given one, or you start one from scratch. And I think sometimes, with a garage owner on a journey that's built up from one technician where he's come from the technical role, and I defer back to the E-Myth by Michael Gerber, who cites much more succinctly than I can about the roles of you're a technician, or you're a manager, or you're a strategist. And as you start in business, you're the technician. So as a business owner in one man or two man, you're a technician who happens to be running a business. And I think there's a certain dynamism that says we get from me and the dog to me, another person and the dog, and the business grows organically. But what might be missing initially is that goal about how do we build the team. And so, evolving into a slightly bigger business was, as you said, the friendly element that we're all one big family. And you hear these statements bandied about and we all work together. But maybe, for me, we have a saying, in God we trust, everyone else must bring data. And so, show me your plan, show me the way that you've moved towards that. And the organic nature sometimes works, but maybe it doesn't. And that's, for me, I think, where I would cite professional to organically grown business. It's still successful. I think there's such a huge advantage in that getting into a little bit of detail and going, okay, here's the profile of the team we've got, or we're looking to build, or the gap we've got. So, and you're right to say sometimes people, when they hear the word psychology, sort of freak out that you're going to be analysing them and finding out they're an axe murderer, when in fact it's not really. It's for my own understanding as a layman, it's really talking about characteristics which may match or may conflict depending on the circumstance, and having awareness of that. There's the safe zone to operate in communications, in operations. It's almost like the fog lifting, and you can see the roadmap. You can see the zones which are safe to counteract with and to work within, and that there are zones of issues. And that's, you've said something else really brilliant there, that the business owner sometimes doesn't realize their own individual preferences or styles, where they go, oh, I always hate when that happens. And you can go, well, that's actually because your personal characteristic is you avoid conflict. You're more into detail and instructions, and that self-awareness is almost, I know when I did it first a long time ago, it was one of those eyes rolling back in the head moment where you recount all of those things, that they've gone on. You go, oh, this really explains it all, and it makes much more sense. And I think for me, when I first did it, gave me that satisfaction that actually that's all pretty cool. And I sort of knew, but I didn't know. And then when you're given the framework, you go, yeah, bang on, right, I'm cool with that. That's no longer an issue, and you can move on knowing those strengths and weaknesses and the relative, matching and unmatching combinations. So. Yeah, and like I say, staying away from that, the keyword of psychology and those things. Yeah. It really is just people. It's understanding people, isn't it?
I like to think of it as if you think of information the same as light, and if you have your garage and it's in pitch black, your technicians have information on the car in front of them, so the car lights up. They've got information on the tools, so the tools light up. But if you don't have information on how they are as an employee, they're not lit up. If they don't understand you as an employer, they're constantly asking you questions because they don't understand that. What you want, the end goal, is for the whole garage to be lit up. You need your staff to have information on everything. Why are we chasing efficiency? What does that actually mean? What does the front of house do? You need to put yourself in the position of somebody in your business and think, right, are they operating with just a head torch? Is that all the information they've got? They just understand what's right in front of them, which is the owner's responsibility to make sure that they've got as much information as they need. And it's not just the test route, the car, and the time, your job sheet, your time, it's not just what's right in front of them. They need to have the whole business lit up. They've not got to know too many ins and outs of how the business is operating. But the more you light up, the more information they've got, the better picture they've got of how everything works. And that also leans in nicely to people connecting with their business better and having that loyalty. So part of what I do is recruiting, and I will contact technicians and see if I can poach them. And sometimes before I've even started explaining, before they even ask what the pay is, they instantly say no because they're happy where they are. And that's exactly what we want from all of our staff, isn't it? And I think I'm not even going to try. That's so nice to hear. Something's going really well there. That's not, and that's what we want. And it's probably somebody that feels really comfortable, respected, appreciated. Everything's lit up. They've got all that information that they need. They know what's going on, and they are happy. And that is what we want to be able to say about all of our staff. And for us as employers, we want to feel like that as well, and not have that horrible Sunday feeling, or that when we're at work that it sits in your stomach, doesn't it? Or you think, I'll just stay with this car working on this for a couple of hours because then I've not got to go and such, or, that frustration of being interrupted. We can eliminate all of that with just understanding the situation so much better in communication. There's just some really nice, gentle changes that we can make that's better for everybody.
Yes, yeah, very true. Yeah, and a really good way of explaining it. I could visualize that as you were saying it, really. And I'm reflecting back to some of the roles I've had where, particularly conversations when I worked on the shop floor, and we're going, customer service indicator score is low. And I'm going, okay, so what does that actually mean to me? Because my job of fixing that car and getting out the door and me making my bonus that month, week, year, I'm hearing hearing something. And latterly, I used to call it initiative fatigue. So I've got something else somebody's rabbiting on about that has no real bearing on what I'm doing. And I'm just being told that this is the new thing. This is the thing we've got to go for. And I'm going, there's a queue of broken cars there. My job is to make sure they're unbroken. Whereas that, because in those circumstances in my previous history, that wasn't joined up and there wasn't a light shone on what that impact was overall of the business. And I think that can come into functional roles too, where you often see conflict between front of house and the workshop because the objective isn't necessarily shared. And you both parties haven't had the open communication where you can see the bigger teamwork and you're actually working together and you've got the synergy of a team. And I think for sure that in my own personal perspective has come because the light hasn't been shone equally in both segments, and you've got silos that exist and conflict unnecessarily. So yeah, communication is one of the key things, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people, as a garage owner, sometimes they don't know themselves. So how can they give that information when they're unsure? Sometimes there's another reason, they might already be frustrated. So why would I want to share that information? Or they tried to involve somebody once and it didn't go how they hoped. And so that's it now, not doing that again. So there's loads of reasons for why, but we know have that information and that communication has positive impact. We know that businesses, industries across the nation, the world are doing that. We know that. That's fact. What we need to understand for an independent garage, because they are so different to so many other businesses, it's a really unique environment where 1 minute you're working alongside somebody and then you're meant to walk into another room and suddenly you're their boss. It's a really unusual situation and you're being asked questions, but you're trying to, there's so much going on. So it's about just tapping into what is going on for you and your garage and how your relationship with your employees to then work out how do we get from how it is to having those conversations and that information. It's that gap where people have bolted. And if you are always saying one-to-one meetings with your staff, they are the golden ticket. They make the best difference. But the first 6 months, your staff are going to be sat there waiting to see if you actually mean this, or is this just a business fad that you're just trying? And if you want them to open up, it is going to take months for them to trust you, because what they don't want to do is go, oh, well, actually, I am feeling slightly uncomfortable about working on such and such. And then for that to just fall off a cliff, nothing to happen. Or they don't know that, they may have had a horrendous boss in the past that just fired them. And so they've got to build trust and confidence that that's not going to happen. So all of that comes from those one-to-ones, but you've got to get to a place, and that's what I like to work with, is getting to a place where they feel comfortable and they know that the first 6 months is building trust. Then when we get past that, we start to see really awesome results where we can have conversations. We know our staff come to us first when they feel like they may want to leave. And so we've got that information first. We can fix it. Or they've got something going on that they in their personal life. So so how do we manage that? Or they're bored, right? Let's get some training, But because we've built that relationship, everything flows so much nicer. It's a really nice way to manage a staff. And then you get to a point where you sit down for your one-to-one and your staff come to you with what they want because you've been doing it for so long. They know the process, they know how it goes, they trust you, they know they get the results. And so you sit down, they tell you what they need to be happy and to stay. And then you discuss, is that achievable? How do we go about it? Or yes, when you do this, this, and this, we can do that. And you can be managing pay rises. There's so many awesome things that can come from that, but it only happens once, you've got to be the leader and step into that process and trust that the first thing to do is build that trust, and then you get the result. But it's not just, oh, this is it. This is how it's always going to be, because it's not. We can change it it's a very easy change to make.
Yes, and it brings me to a question there, Jen. So is there is there a methodology that a business can use in some way, shape, or form to do a health check or an audit? Is there a happyometer? How the team is feeling? Without, I suppose, the risk of asking how people are is that you get an answer that you either were expecting and didn't want to hear, or that you weren't expecting. How can garages go about sort of the first steps towards, right, things aren't working well, we've got some friction, we've got some issues. What's some basic steps they could take to maybe doing that health check or audit or sounding out, to try and make the improvement? Where to start? Because sometimes when the problem seems so big, it's that old analogy about the elephant. Which are the first bites we should take if we're owning a garage in the elephant-sized problem that is team health or well-being?
So the answer isn't one size fits all. From just a health check audit perspective, I can do an audit, a questionnaire within an employer. Have you got this? Have you done that? What about this? And then we can make an educated, not bet, but we can make an educated decision, evaluation of actually your staff are probably feeling undervalued, or you've got some people that are probably looking to leave, or this is why they're not that engaged. So we can take an observer's perspective that way. What you mentioned there is really important as well, is if we sit down with our staff and go, right, what are you not happy with? And then they tell us, and then we do nothing, we've made the situation worse. So going back to, we want to be building trust. And it's not to say that your staff don't trust you. You could, loads of people go, oh, I've got a really good team, everything's working really well, excellent. We don't want to be shaking that up. But what we don't know is actually, is it? So, it's a place that never reports any accidents. Doesn't mean they don't have any accidents. They're just not being reported. So we need to start very gently building up that trust and checking in with our staff by just things that are on the surface at first. Maybe it's the layout of something that we can change. And, we need to be asking ourselves, is that something we can actually do something about? But again, that comes back to the management training and the colour profiling and being aware. So then we can go with that example of the tech that doesn't like their day being changed. Once we've got that awareness, we can then have that conversation with them of, if we need to change what's booked in the afternoon, let's have a conversation about what process works for you and works for the business. So then we're involving them. We should never really, when we can avoid it, be making a decision about our staff, including them. It's crazy. Like, when you work in a huge organisation, you see all these people in head office having these meetings about what we're going to do about our staff and, how are we going to motivate them and keep them, and nobody's asking them. So we want to be having that conversation with them about just a process, something that's about how the garage is operating, what can we do to make that improvement? And then they see that you're listening, that you're having a conversation about how is that practical, how can we go about it, and always acknowledging that how busy a garage is. And so we want to be keeping things really realistic and steady improvements, and that the agreement is always that we will review it. When will we pick up this conversation again? And as long as you stick to that, you are demonstrating that you can be trusted. The worst thing that somebody, not the worst thing, but it's really unhelpful if a boss goes, right, we're going to start doing one-to-ones. They have a one-to-one and they say, oh, actually, this is really annoying me. And you do get an employee that opens up and you've got all this information and go, right, we're going to do these every month. And then next month comes and you either haven't booked it in, which what does that say to the staff? Or you have booked it in, but you cancel it because there's an angry customer or there's something that needs doing. And I always say, if you're going to start these, it doesn't matter if a customer's screaming, what is going on in the garage, you have to commit to that one-to-one, because you are saying, our conversation is the most important thing. And that's the message that you should be giving, because that's what makes the staff feel heard and respected, building up that trust. So then that leads into the outcome of them saying to you when they're not happy, and it not just being in a coming from a place of having a dig or venting, which can feel really personal as a business owner. So then you've got the emotion to deal with as well, the anger, the frustration. But you actually get to a position where they're coming to you, they understand that you're trying and that you want them to be there, but they come to you more with perhaps a solution, or how about this? And it's less emotive. It's more, it really does come back to gentle changes. And then rather than getting huge peaks of problems, they're just, they rise very gently. We can see them coming, we're in control of it, and then we can soothe it. So it just makes the whole process, being an employer and an employee, so much smoother. It's far better, just through that little and often.
Yeah, so the one-to-one, the communication on a one-to-one basis with the team has got to be out there. But like you say, it's that commitment to doing it, to improving. And I think it's like anything. My whenever I do something in my personal life, for instance, I've taken up the guitar. I bought a guitar in September with the intention of learning the guitar. And the way I've achieved the things I achieve is they become a habit. So in December the 23rd, I started playing and committed every day to have at least 10 minutes of practice. And here we are, whatever day it is in January now, that I've met that commitment. It's become a habit. I've committed to doing it to reach the goal of being learning Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star by next Christmas or whatever it will be. It has to be that repetitive habit, and you're committing to the outcome. And in fact, then it turns out that the doing is actually part of the process to achieving, and the doing doesn't become the thing, it becomes the mechanism to achieve the end goal. So yeah, really important to that. And reiterating that as an employee, in my perspective, then when you get one-to-one time with the manager where you can voice the things that you can see are wrong in the business. And let's be right, you've identified that most people that work in garages are problem solvers. So they can observe the problems that exist in the flow, in the workflow, in whichever element of the business, and have an idea. And in fact, as a workshop technician myself, the frustration of it not being changed when it seems bleeding obvious, and the boss you haven't had the communication, and it's being ignored in your perspective, and maybe it isn't, it's on the list of things to do, but because there's a communication gap, you feel frustrated by the thing that's out of your control. And the one-to-one pops that balloon of frustration, and you know that they know that you've agreed to do something about it together. And where the psychology part, the positive element of psychology, where people get freaked out, that's the positive part. The communication just makes the problem not disappear. You've acknowledged it, and we're working towards it. But you're right, starting that and keeping that on and maintaining that momentum is absolutely critical. So really good to know. That's absolutely sage advice. We'd be remiss talking about teams and people at the core of businesses without probably at least mentioning the crisis, as it's called, in technician recruitment, and how garages around the country have maybe gaps in their team that they're having trouble filling. I think we've done some. We've talked about the strength of teams in existence, and of course you've mentioned retention there, and obviously one of the ways to prevent having a recruitment crisis is to have high levels of retention. And if your staff and members aren't leaving, you don't have a problem. But retirements and other factors of staff not being in the business. I suppose I've got a couple of questions that could come in different order, but I'm really interested to ask you your opinion really of maybe what do you think has caused the technician crisis? So we'll split it into chunks, because I've got another question about when you hear people that have got a gap. Okay, what are you looking for? I want a good technician. Okay, I've just siphoned through my things that look, they're good technician, 2 arms and 2 legs and the head's on the right way around. Is that what you mean by good? And, I think there's an element to the recruiting bit, which hopefully we'll touch on. But if we could what's your view, Jen, on why there is a crisis, why there is a recruitment issue in terms of finding candidates for garages?
I would sum it up as technicians have felt like it is easier to leave than it is to stay. I think that's what if we really boiled it down, and that would mean different things for different technicians. It might be the learning, if they were in a job and technicians are experiencing different working environments in different garages, and not just, main dealer, aftermarket. Every, 5 minutes down the road, they will have a different experience as a technician. And I think we have to mention COVID. People worked through that while seeing people on furlough. And some people went on furlough, but the majority weren't on furlough for long. And I think I wrote a blog about this as well, actually. The moving house theory. When you've moved house, then you get ill because you've powered through it, and then when you sit down, suddenly it all hits you. And I think through COVID, obviously people were frustrated and stressed, but people weren't leaving their jobs. They were still going to work, majority technicians still going to work, working out how to function through that pressure, through that pandemic. And then that lifted and the world looked different. People were getting jobs. I can work from home. I carried on working. I didn't have to go out into the real world. And people, I think they got to a point where they'd emotionally or physically or both had enough. We know there's a mental health crisis. And I don't believe, this could be a very unpopular opinion, but I don't believe looking at a car for most of your day is the healthiest thing that we can be doing. And if you spend all day looking at a car, you don't really talk to people, you don't really talk about other things, and then you go straight home and perhaps you don't do other things that feed the soul, I don't know how good that is for your mental health. And I think people perhaps put it down to, I'm in the wrong industry. And especially when their boss is going, you need to squeeze another hour of work in, or why are you making that mistake? You had that repair to do 2 months ago and you made the same. And if they're getting that environment, I'm not sure how attractive that is when they see somebody that's on a, working from home on a very well paid apprenticeship learning to code or something, and they're wearing their slippers all day. Of course, that's going to seem more attractive. So I think we've got a responsibility to speak to our technicians and shift. I think people underestimate how much flexibility they've actually got as a business owner. I'm aware I'm an outsider. I'm aware I've only been in the industry for, 4 years full time. And I might seem a bit optimistic or a bit of a dreamer, but there are flexibilities. Do you need everybody to start at that time? Do you need to be organising the day in that way? Be asking those questions. What impact is that having? We've got to be competitive. We've got to change something. And I really believe that this industry is on the verge of something really exciting. Seeing, the impact and the shift and the reactions that clients are having that I've been working with, I'm really excited. I think what's coming in the next couple of years is going to be very attractive, and we're going to see this crisis reverse. I think it is going to balance itself out, but we're going through what they call a storming phase. We've gone through a shift, a change, and things need to settle back down, and they'll probably settle slightly different. Well, they will settle differently to what they used to be, but I think that's a good thing. And I just keep saying to everybody, we've just got to hold on. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned some interesting points that I'd like to just pick up on. One, competitive in competition, and when you're thinking about a vacancy in a garage, and a garage owner that's looking for a technician is thinking his competition is the garage where the technician is working and that's unhappy. And really, what you've highlighted, which when we talk to technicians, we realise this. No, the competition is I can go and work on the railways, I can go and work in a store, I can go and work in a factory, and where the competition is, and these are then with more paid holiday, the salary's slightly higher. But again, when you drill into the reasons why a technician may not be happy, you fit the nail squarely on the head in terms of my own specialism, which is the diagnosis of complex issues, which affect every garage. There is an element to mental fortitude and actually self-care during the process of fixing a problem car, with the pressure of the customer being let down. They need their car back. The garage owner going, we've got no more time. For the poor technician, really is now responsible for solving those issues that are external, the customer issues, that are internal, garage man issues, and then that are internal to the technician, the pressure to fix that fault. In addition to that, so the technician's got his own skills at hand, so his skills, knowledge, and aptitude. He then relies on the garage owner having the right tools, equipment, previous training, and resources to enable that, and they maybe don't exist. And so in that case where the technician may leave that job, the competition isn't anything about the external factors. It's about the internal support that man or lady has got in fixing that car. You don't have the right tool. You haven't got the information. You don't subscribe to this. You're expecting me to work with second-rate stuff. I'm off, because they see that as the root cause to their own internal pressure, which technicians may not also be very good at verbalizing that to the boss, and the bosses, they don't understand that. Maybe the garage owner and they think it's all about pay. We're paying you all this money and you've got this. And actually, no, the factor, and this is one of the questions really about the health check, is, how do you check in with your team to drill down to that level of what's at the root cause of the unhappiness, which is not necessarily what the garage owner's thinking in terms of terms and conditions and, parking and perks, where this is a function of the role that is really unhealthy and causing mental strain, that the technician goes home and who do they talk to? Talk to the wife, the girlfriend, the partner about this horrendous day they've had in the minutiae of this intermittent fault that's driving them up the wall and is creating this external pressure. And, the competition to the keeping the technician, they would leave to do anything that doesn't contain that. Not that they want to go for other reasons. It's a version of that pressure, not as more money, not it's as closer to my home. The convenience, they're solving the internal issue they don't think is solvable in that role, in that business.
And I know, as doing the recruitment, I can put an advert up that's ranging from 28,000, or another company could be offering 48,000. And we experience very similar recruitment methods, processes, applicants. It's not a really, obviously we go to work for money. That's obvious, but that's not the game changer in recruitment, keeping your staff. And if somebody is motivated by money, then we should know that. And so then we know, right, well, we'll motivate them with money then. But we also need to tap into, and the type of person that is motivated by money, is it because they like the pressure? Right. So, some people, they start procrastinating when they're not in a really high pressure environment. So we know that they will naturally prefer to work when they've got a service advisor saying how much longer, and they know the customer, all that pressure that you described. Some techs love that, but we need to know if they love that. And even still, it's our job to still pay attention to that. Does have a bit of a toll. Some people are buzzing from it, but it's still, they're going to get a crash and go, poof, that was an intense day. So, it's just not realistic to suddenly sit down in front of somebody and go, how are you feeling then? Talk to me about your emotions. And, their vocab for emotions might just be good, bad, sad. And they might not even know that what they're feeling isn't normal. They might just think that's work. My dad taught me work's hard, go in and you do this. And if you're getting any more than that, you must be robbing somebody. You know, we've all had different upbringings when it comes to money and work, and, you know, what is our approach. And so it's our jobs to actually create that environment, and observe and pay attention. And, you know, as you've said, being a technician, and front of house, any role in the garage is intense. There's so many things that you need to know, but it's that swan analogy, isn't it? If you're just meant to look calm. And so people don't know unless they've done it. They haven't got a clue how much is involved in that job. And that's usually where people's statement stops. But the next part of that is actually, well, if you are capable of all of that and you're doing all of that, then think how much we can do with all of that skill and knowledge once we just add a bit of understanding people and just give that a nice bit of extra information in there, then everything kind of falls into place. And, you know, this is why I'm excited for the potential for all of these businesses, because they've just been working so hard in such tough conditions without all of this other information that's dancing around all these other businesses and industries. And actually, when I'm bringing this information and they're getting it from other sources, seeing that the outcome is really cool, it's really exciting, everybody feels better, everything's operating, and they are the tight unit and the business that people want, the garage that they want.
Yeah, and it helps everyone prosper. Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. You mentioned also then about you know, the word mental health and self-care. What sort of tips can you give to you know, garage owners and technicians? What sort of measures, you know, that people should be thinking about in terms of self-care? Because some people, as you say, are, you know, motivated by that 100%, 100 mile an hour, actually not thinking about things that there may be a distraction element of that helps if they've got problems elsewhere in their life, that throwing themselves into work avoids having to think about the other stuff. But if you picked, you know, an average Joe in an average job that is getting a level of stress in his work that he's maybe recognizing is slightly elevated, what sort of measures, you know, can techs and garage owners think about in terms of self-care? Any tips?
There's years and years and years worth of research into this, and there's so many different schools of thought. But I think what would probably ring true to most people in the industry is to understand that our body is a mechanism that is being impacted by our brain. So the reason why I initially fell in love with psychology is a type called psychosomatic psychology. And, you know, we know stress causes a heart attack. You know, that's generally common knowledge, but that's where it stops. But actually what is happening is our brain releases chemicals depending on what it thinks is going on in the world. But those chemicals are released in different organs and different parts of our body. So, for example, anxiety and stress is released from our liver. So if you're getting pain there, it may not be that you've got a mechanical, physical job. It could be the stress chemicals are physically being released there. And so it's causing the muscles to spasm and react to that. So that could be why somebody goes to the doctor, the hospital, the specialist. They can't find any problems because it probably is psychosomatic. It's your brain. And if people are forgetful, it's because they're ignoring something that they really should be paying attention to. You know, something that's bothering them, so it makes them forgetful. Those things. So to bring that answer around, what I think is quite helpful for a lot of people is to just look after their body. So whether that is saying, I will make sure I get a certain amount of steps, or I will get fresh air. I will, you know, there's loads of research in seeing the sunrise and seeing the sunset, but people are going to work, so they're leaving the house. But, you know, what am I putting into my body? What time am I going to sleep? All of these, if you, and the other part of that, the other problem is when we're depressed, when we feel horrendous, the last thing we want to do is healthy stuff. There's something going on for us. that tells us to drink, smoke, sit on the sofa, eat crap, that's what the body's doing. Like there's that thing on your shoulder saying, oh no, do that. But actually, if we go for the walk, if we do a swim, go for the exercise, do something to treat our body, that then has the reverse effect of telling your brain, we're not stressed, we're safe, things are okay. So then you've treated the brain. So then that then helps you deal with the external stress. So that's, and I could spent years studying it. There are so many different things that we can do to be handling stress, but that's the approach that I personally find the most helpful. If you're in the workshop and you've had a real stinker of a morning, going for that walk and not driving, because that's not doing your body any favour. That's just visually giving you a change of scenery. Physically, your body needs to exercise. It needs to get that oxygen going around, moving. Trying to eat something a bit healthier, or and even just having a glass of water. There's something like 10% dehydration causes something like a 70% cognitive deterioration. It's huge. So, just having a really small glass of water, and it sounds like, well, yeah, I've had an absolute shitter of a day. I've got this going on, go home, I've got kids, and you're telling me to eat a carrot and go for a walk. I get it sound that, real helpful. But actually, when we separate it, we know that our brain is, from when we were cavemen, it doesn't understand fixing a car. It doesn't understand software not loading. It doesn't understand all of these things that we're going on. All it understands is something's stressful, something's bad, kick off, make the body do something about it. But actually what we're then doing is taking control of that and saying to our body, it's all right. It's, it's something that we can control and manage. So then that takes the emotion out of it slightly. So then that's better for our health anyway. Treating the body, that would be something, if you can do anything, do that.
Yeah, no, and that's one thing. I'm an advocate of that. I mountain bike is one of my stress relievers, and I find the mental is overtaken sometimes by the physical. That if you're working hard, your brain is switching off because you're focusing on the doing. And I think it's probably a little bit back to the habits that in making that part. Not leaving that to treat the stress that you feel, but having that as a maintenance methodology, that you do that as part of your daily, that will, help mitigate the stress peaks that you get, rather than waiting for the stress peaks and then dealing with them. I think you're right. And I find that integrating that into your, the habits of a healthy life. Yeah, the brain and the body are definitely linked, and the brain has definitely got more influence over the body sometimes. And the reaction, as you said, stress from chemicals, tightening the arteries, the fight or flight, that elevated level of, anxiousness, which can be positive and it can be negative. So that's really useful. The self-care. And I think a lot of people maybe don't have that in their lives. It's not something that's a focus or a determined element of the regular going to the gym or going for a walk, using that time to de-stress. Really good. And that's garage owners and technicians and front of house. Everybody really has their own way of accepting the stress. It's finding that way of managing it and relieving it, and also realizing, I guess, that there are channels, having somewhere to go sometimes with your feeling is another thing, where sometimes if you've got that established one-to-one relationship with your co-workers or your boss, that you feel comfortable almost letting them know, because sometimes even just citing that's the thing, the way you feel is often recognition of it is the beginning of solving it, where I know technicians and men in general, but technicians and other workshop staff that don't necessarily feel open communication is part of their natural way, where again the benefit of having one-to-ones and key relationships inside the business can enable you to have that, I need 5 minutes and it's just, this is the way I feel, boom, out it comes, and the weight lifts and you go, oh, okay, I didn't realize that was quite as bad as that was actually, but I feel much better now. And even just, saying it out loud can be the recognition that means it's less of an issue. And it sounds silly, but those talking therapies, in inverted commas, talking to somebody about it, you're not looking for answers even, it's just getting it out there. can help. Yeah. No, so what wise advice? Jennifer, one other common question that comes up are often in technicians and businesses, and they're viewing this maybe from two different perspectives, is the training bit. So being in the training business, training needs analysis and training for teams and training in teams to make the team stronger, and the benefit or the element of training that has on retention and building capability. Sometimes talking to garage owners about the reason why technician A or B is being suggested for training course X, Y, or Z, it sometimes becomes apparent that there isn't really a plan. It's a little bit unstructured, and maybe the technician suggested it, maybe the garage owner suggested it. Is there some elements of structure that a garage and or technician could maybe bring into their business to ensure that we're very conscious in delivering excellent, trying to get that really high value for money and return on investment in training. But often with the technician will arrive on a course. Hopefully they've suggested they come on it, and the garage owners supported them because they realized. But is there something garage owners and technicians can think about in terms of the training, recognizing, identifying, and then maybe working a plan? Because I know a lot of training sometimes is unplanned. What sort of advice could you give garage owners and techs along the training bit and front of house? So skills training per se.
The recognizing part of it needs to take into account, is this somebody that is motivated by learning? Are they somebody that just, we all know, and sometimes we're that person that just loves to learn? The more information, the better. So is it that they are just excited to go on new training? Is it that they want to, because there's a difference as well in going to a place for training or, pre-recorded online learning or reading. So is it the sociable element that they're actually, we really want to be tapping into this. What is the reason for why they may be saying yes to the training? And again, if you're already having those one-to-ones, you're easing into that conversation. The person that you're speaking to, so they're saying that actually they need a social fix. They want to go and speak to some other people, or they're getting frustrated that they don't know how to do such and such, or they're worried about their job security, so they feel like they need to learn that. But actually, what we need is them to just turn around excellent MOTs all day. So really understanding who you're speaking to and what they want out of it, and then, is it actually going to be of value to the business? So I say to employers that actually their job really is to be the voice for the business. The business can't speak, so you need to be the eyes, you need to see what's impacting it, and then you need to voice what is going to benefit the business. Even though it's your business, this isn't actually anything to do with you. This is about the business. So then looking at, well, how much profit would we make? What jobs does that open us up to? What independence does that give that person? Understanding what doors it opens. And then let's say you've got to the situation where you've identified that this person should go on this training. I encourage everybody to sit down with that person and ask them, what are 3 things that you want to get from this? So, at the end, when the tutor's going, are there any questions? If their top 3 things hasn't been met, then they can put their hand up and go, well, actually, there's this thing. Or, some trainers ask it at the beginning. But also making sure that if their 3 don't meet what the business needs, you add 3. And you have that conversation and explain to them. So remember, information is light. You're not just saying, here's some days out of the business, go to this course. You're giving them the information on what is the bigger picture here, what is the point of it. So then they've got that information sticks better when we've got an anchor for it, also a hook, something to, why are we learning this? And then they go on the training, and then when they come back, you revisit those points. What did you learn? Because I hear people come back and they go, and they went on that training and they've not met what the employer wanted. they may know how to do this other thing amazingly, but that communication wasn't there, so the employer doesn't know what was needed. And then from a legal perspective, if the training is not mandatory, you can introduce a training agreement where costs are recouped if the employee leaves in a certain time frame. But if the training is mandatory, you can't do that because it's for the business. It's not just because the employee is interested.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. We have some pretty interesting conversations about the inquiries for training, and it's one of those things. What are you hoping to build extra capability in your business, or have you recognised a gap in technician A's capabilities, or it may be the technician's scoping out the training to go and propose it to the business owner. And so we hear those conversations, and yeah, very much so. What are you hoping to get from the course? What is it that you're not doing? We sometimes recommend in an early stage that they keep an audit of the things that they can't do that they're hoping to be able to do. So we have a definitive, these are the gaps that we've got in our capability or offering and that we're hoping to fill. Some sort of more planning. Sometimes we find that there's training is offered. It's a bit like a broken relationship where you're buying flowers, going out for a meal and going away for a weekend, trying to resurrect the relationship. And we try and pick that up if that's the case, because in 95% of cases where it's a token offering at the end of the relationship to try and salvage it, the technician or the employee will end up leaving the business because the training was not enough. Because actually the training wasn't the root cause. There were so many other issues that actually it's a bit like blaming the breakup on the relationship because the hotel wasn't any good. It really isn't. So we're key to try and pick that up and establish those reasons. And it's great to hear you say that. And again, from the business owner, working out what is this a business need? Is this a personal need for the technician? Do the two mesh? And ideally, that's where we find the most success, is where there's the need on both sides. There's an opportunity and a willingness to invest in coming on the training, which goes way beyond just the training. It's the loss of earnings and it's the hotel. But getting that return on investment for us is absolutely key to delivering that training. And we would happily not participate or sell that training place if it's done for the wrong reason. It sounds crazy, but in the long term, we've had employers and garage owners come back to us and say, we had that conversation X period of time ago, and just the foresight you gave us to advise us not to do it was great. And we will end up picking up the business in another case in another way. But for us, that's absolutely critical. But we often hear a lack of the training plan. This is my goal as a technician. This is our goal as a business, to enable and skill up that technician, to make him from service technician to diagnostic technician to master technician. And it sort of comes back also to the competition that your garage and the employee thinks that they're, in a technician crisis, your employee or garage worker may be lacking a personal development plan. And the reason they're looking not to be in your business anymore is because they can find that element somewhere else. And that audit about health of the garage, that one-to-one about working out people's motivations and needs. To be honest, if a training course or program is the difference between keeping and retaining an employee and having them being a high performer or not, I think, you weigh up the absolute cost to a business of losing a technician, then the pain of the recruitment crisis, the recruitment process, and the lost earnings in that intermediate time. Having the communication and really understanding from both sides, and then facilitating development versus losing somebody and replacing them is a no-brainer, I think. But I think it's interesting to hear you say that training plans.
What you've described there is the perfect storm almost of how all of that ties in. So you could have a technician that you think isn't interested, or they keep coming to you asking how to do something. The second you walk into the workshop, that just come and have a look at this. They want you, they're checking everything, and you must be thinking, well, sometimes the garage owner's then thinking, this person isn't getting it. But actually, they could just be the kinesthetic learner. You're verbalizing the answer, but they learn by doing. And that would be the perfect example of that might be somebody that misses going on training because you've presumed they're not getting the hang of things when you're verbally instructing, but actually they would benefit so much from, and I've seen this played out, having that time with somebody, going through something, how to do it, someone actually showing them and then watching them, observing them go through it, and the improvements, they're huge very quickly because finally you've tapped into their learning style. But that only happens if you tap into and pay attention to the person. So you've got an example there, and the frustration there, if they haven't done that, then we're always thinking this tech isn't getting it, but actually you're not getting the communication style right, and you've got a fantastic tech there that you're just not getting, tapping into how they communicate, how they learn, and then put them on the training, they get it, they know what they're doing, and suddenly the questions stop because they've got it. And I think there's something that taps into people being self-aware, and I think quite a lot of people in the industry are perhaps worn down. And I think they need to be very self-conscious and very self-aware of what they're saying and who they're verbalizing that to. And I think I like to remind employers that the people that we employ, they come to a location that we've picked. They work in an environment that is how we have designed it. We decide what they wear, when they stop to eat, how much they get paid, when they go on training. In whatever word you want to use, we have decided so much of their day, and we are deciding if they're going to get more pay. Are they going to, we've got a stern word to say, all of these different factors. So they are watching us like a hawk, everything we do, and garage owners really forget that. And so if you're going to somebody saying, oh, this is shit, or moaning about something that's not right, or we're not respected in the industry, it's the butterfly effect. It's just like a huge sound wave, boom, the impact that has on morale, culture. And then, people are feeling horrendous. And then they've got a boss that say, well, no, we're all underpaid, or people pointing out I've had to stay late, and all of this, it's just hit after hit on the well-being, the mentality. And so if they're in that environment, then somebody goes, oh, do you want to go on training? Or there's this training, I suppose you want to go on it. That's the wording people using sometimes. And the technician's thinking, I have got no idea what the right answer is here. I don't know. Do I want to learn more? Do I want to stay in this industry? I'm looking at you and you've gone on this training and I'm not sure you're happy. So I don't know. Do I? So, they're being really self-aware of, and if you feel like that, that's okay. You haven't got the last thing you should do is be bottling it and skipping around the workshop and, saying how amazing life is, but you've got to find an appropriate place. That's what your consultants are for. That's what your people outside the business are for, to vent it and then find a better solution, because it doesn't need to be like that.
No, and I think you've hit, what I would term leadership then, and role models, where, the garage owner is the leader of that business. He is the captain of that ship. And, I often think of a ship in trouble, when things aren't going well, the captain is the calm voice of influence that this is all going to be great. We're in this. We've got this plan. Okay, Joe, you do this, and Fred, you do that. We'll work our way through it. But I think you're right. A lot of garage owners can be frustrated by their environment. They have no outlet. They have nowhere to go. And the team seems to be involved in those lower level decisions where, often if you look at, one of the things that always struck me as a kid in school was, why do the teachers have the staff room? And why are we eating in this hall? Teachers are going to the staff room to let it all go before the next lesson and come back as professionals, and not let the kids that have been annoying them actually come out. And so I think, business leaders almost need to go to the staff room where they've got their own counsel. They just, they have they shout into the plastic bag and then come back out with the voice of, reason, and be the role model and be the leader.
Yeah. There is a huge need. I think about doing it sometimes, but I'm not the right person to do it. But there is a huge need for a automotive social. There's a huge need for it. The British Legion of the automotive industry. I don't know, but it's a lonely old game, isn't it? It's being a manager is lonely. Making those decisions when you've got 5, 7, 12 people looking at you wanting more pay, and you've got all. It's hard going, but having that sociable element and, like you're saying, having a way of dealing with that can take all that feeling out. So then we've got ideas, we've got solutions, we feel better about going into it. But then what everybody else sees is this is fine. We know what we're doing. We're planned. We're organised. That customer's going to be hot-headed. They're human. It happens. Everybody makes mistakes. We'll learn from it, and we'll discuss it at our one-to-ones. It'll be fun. But rather than people making bad decisions in the moment because this is the 8th unhappy customer they've seen this week and they cannot take it anymore. I remember when I used to work in rehab, I used to think of my ability for caring for those people like a battery. And if I didn't recharge that battery, I was going to burn out. You are giving a lot. And you are giving a lot in this industry as well, because as you said, you've got the customer demand. It's, you are giving a lot to people. And it's exactly the same as everything. If the customer's happy, they don't come in and give you a round of applause and you've smashed it today. At best, you get a 5-star review. But if it's the other way around, as if the whole town knows about, we've got that pressure on our chest, and it's just not balanced at all, is it? So if we've got better ways of dealing with that, but that only comes from stepping out of the workshop a little bit. If we're in, like with COVID and lockdown, look at the human behaviour. People were suddenly getting obsessed with banana bread and how tidy were the kitchen cupboards and all these things that's right in front of them was suddenly so important. But beforehand, when they could have a far more diverse life, they didn't even notice that the kitchen drawer was rendered. That banana went bad, But so it's exactly the same for the work environment. We need to, take that pressure off. But it's hard. I'm not naive in thinking, it's just words and let's take the pressure off. I know as soon as you go back into that workshop, but that's why we need spaces where people can step out and vent and talk. Everybody does.
Yeah, it's interesting. We the self-care, that's back to the self-care element, and we do find on some of the longer programs and the senior programs where we get owners and managers on there that they actually reflect that it is a bit of therapy coming to the group, coming to do the technical learning and coming to prosper and advance their knowledge, the social aspect and the getting together with others that are suffering the same thing. It's not just me. Here's a technique. Have you thought of this? Coming from an influencing voice, but somebody that's not directly involved, sharing that. That's the huge, powerful bit that we found in that. And you're right. I think back in COVID, we had the automotive support group that had a huge number of members that the group of us set up that worked along those lines. And I think you're right. There probably is a need for, I'm not going to say therapy, but that group element where it's okay. We are all in that same boat. There are things that go on that affect us differently. You can speak freely here and think about a solution, or just recognize that you didn't realize you're under that much pressure yourself until you've let it go and you've gone, God, that was a big issue. So yeah, I think you're right. Yes. Yeah, vote for you, President Jennifer, President of the Automotive Social Club. I think we'll vote you in. I'll look for a seconder now in the comments below the podcast. No, really good stuff. Listen, Jen, it's been brilliant to talk to you about your specialist knowledge in these, and I really appreciate you spending time, with me and our listener, talking about the things that are dear to your heart and sharing your expertise. Thanks ever so much. And we've got before, there's a bit of a tradition now. Before you go, you get two wishes. And so thinking about things that you might want to change, and it came from the magic wand, and you get one wish on the down swoop and one wish on the up swoop. So if there are things that you could change within the industry, money's no object, and there are no how to do it and how it's going to be achieved is irrelevant. But what would there be a couple of things that you might change at a swoosh of the magic wand that would make things better?
I, for a long time, and I think it's because I can see how much potential there is, my wish would be that people working in the industry realise that they could become the role models and the envy of the other industries. There is bucket loads. There is so much potential for finance and all these other industries to be looking and going, oh, the automotive industry, they're smashing it, they're getting it right. The potential is there. And so my wish would be that people started to feel like that, because that would be half the battle, and the excitement, and how, it would be really cool. That would be my wish, for people to start thinking, people will be going, when I'm older, or going to college because they want to get into the industry because we've got it right, we've aced it. So that would be one wish. Second wish, maybe just for a few more technicians. I think a few more service advisors. I think that would be my wishes.
Good. I think there'll be popular wishes, and I think any garage owner that was on the run up to Christmas on his Santa list, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Perfect. Thanks for this. Oh, mine vary from week to week. I've got a bucket full of wishes. Yeah, I think mine is about professionalism, is about role models, and about, garages lifting up that professionalism overtly, which I think would help attract people in, which would solve the technician crisis over time. My other specific narrow wish this week is focus on quality training. So where delivery of training meets the objectives of the attendee and not necessarily of the host organization. So we're zoning in to deliver really quality products and training. And my two wishes for this week.
Nice.
Brilliant. So Jen, once again, thanks ever so much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and spending time. Really appreciate you giving up your time to be with us, and we'll catch you soon.
Yeah, thank you. I've loved it.